Okay, a little 5-minute video about a group that I fell in love with, and now I volunteer a whole bunch of my time with them.
Thank you that you give us children the chance to share our thoughts with you. It's not common, but children think it should be common. When I was in 4th grade, 9 years old, and in our class we had the unit about the climate crisis. And during this unit I learned a lot about Wangari Maathai, the Peace Nobel Prize laureate from Kenya, and she planted 30 million trees in 30 years with many, many other women there.
30 million trees.
And in this unit, I developed that idea that we could plant 1 million trees in each country of the world.
Oh, and he was in 4th grade. Yeah. Now how are you feeling about stopping climate change? Are you feeling a little differently now? So almost 15 billion trees have been counted by the kids in Plant for the Planet, and the goal is 1,000 billion. It was originally 1 million trees in each country of the world. That would be about 200 million trees. Now we're aiming for 1 trillion, because that's the amount that's required to get 10 years worth of pollution back into the ground. We're not really on the way yet. We're just getting started. We've got about 985, 84 billion to go. So you can help. Do your fair share, 150 trees. Do 150 every year. It's fun. Plant for the Planet is the only group on Earth that has a 3-point plan to end the climate crisis, which is backed up by the best economics and science on the planet. And that's why I fell in love with them and started volunteering and started organizing academies here in the Puget Sound area. There's Felix now. He was voted European of the Year in 2015 by a magazine. He's in college now in London. He's not going to Hogwarts. It was legally our obligation to your generation to protect your air and water, and that is true. And so we went to court, and for the first time in U.S. history, a court ordered a government to fix climate for you. Every kid in Washington now has the right, in law, to a stable climate, because these kids went to court. It's like when the Supreme Court said schools couldn't be white schools and black schools anymore, right? You had to let everybody get a good equal education. Well, grown-ups can't have all the good air and water. We have to let kids have good air and water too. We owe it to future generations. That's the law. So they're also suing the federal government. The guy in the middle there with the afro is Aji, and he's from Seattle, and a couple of the other kids are from Portland. And they're suing the federal government in the trial of the century. They're suing, well, they were suing the Obama administration, now they're suing the Trump administration, and 9 federal agencies. And 9 federal agencies that have ignored the science, ignored their own science, continued to permit all the extraction, the mining, the drilling, the poisoning of the planet, way beyond any safe threshold, thresholds they knew about back in 1965. That's against the law. So this trial is going to happen later this year. It's based out of Eugene, Oregon. I'm going to be down in Eugene. So I'm going to be down in Eugene this weekend in an environmental law conference where people from around the world are getting together to study, among other things, this case. So I hate this. I hate this. It's awful. I love the Lion King so much. And yet that's where I grew up. I grew up in that landscape. And And I thought it was totally normal. I didn't know any different. I'm so lucky to be living in Seattle and surrounded by trees and mountains and clean water. But when I grew up, that's what everything looked like in the 60s and 70s. And it's not getting any better. So I am now not working for money. I am now working for the planet. And every day I get up and I ask myself, what can I do for the planet today? And since I started doing that, being a hummingbird, right, like dropping my little drop of water on the wildfire, I found something amazing. The woods are filled with hummingbirds. Hummingbirds I never would have met if I had just stayed home, freaked out and anxious about what was happening to our home. But as soon as I stepped out of my house and started doing something, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe the amazing people right in this town who are doing crazy stuff for the planet. That's how I learned about Plan for the Planet. That's how I learned about this lawsuit and got the lawsuit going here in Washington. It was because I got out and started meeting people. So, all this fossil fuel that's in the tar sands in Canada, the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota, where Standing Rock is, and the Powder River Basin coal, those 3 giant carbon bombs underground have to stay underground. They just have to stay underground. For us to stay below crazy temperatures and get back to 350, we can't burn that stuff. The place that wants to burn that stuff is Asia. China and India and other countries will pay 3 or 4 times what that stuff's worth here. So all that carbon has to go to the West Coast to get to Asia. Well, that's where we live. That's you and me. That's our neighborhood. There's oil trains and coal trains and pipelines coming right through here. And if you and I can stop them, we can stop 5 times the amount that was moving or would have moved through the Keystone XL just by stopping the projects that are being considered in our part of the country. So that's what we're doing. We're stopping them. And so far we've stopped like 18 projects just in the last few years. And how did we do it? People power. Just people like us sitting around in a room going, what do we do? What do we do? How are we going to stop this? And then doing everything we can. So this is the tar sands underneath that green spot in Canada. That green spot in Canada is absorbing 3 times more CO2 than the Amazon rainforest. That green spot's really important. But they call that overburden. The people who want the tar sands that's underneath. The tar sands, you heat it up in a chemical stew that's toxic and get it warm. You can stick it in a pipeline or you can turn it into something called bitumen. And that's what they want to ship through the Keystone XL. That's what's moving right now through the Keystone pipeline in North Dakota. It's an area the size of Florida. And they want all that green stuff gone so that they can make green stuff, money, with the lungs of the earth. Right, see, we've forgotten that we need the lungs, that's the green stuff, and we think we need this other stuff. Yeah, it's a place that looks more like Mordor. If birds land there, they die instantly, so they've got cannons firing 24/7 to keep birds from landing. It's that toxic, and people, indigenous tribes are dying of cancer. The last villages are being wiped out because of the cancer. So that's Dr. James Hansen in at the White House getting arrested 5 years ago. And he was doing it to stop the Keystone XL pipeline, which would have carried almost 900,000 barrels of oil from Alberta down to my hometown, Houston, Texas. And he said, Mr. President, if you allow this pipeline to be built across the Canadian border, it is game over for the planet. The president wasn't listening, so he got himself arrested, along with 1,250 friends, over 10 days. And that human blockade of the White House must have done something, because the bill was on the president's desk and he didn't sign it. He didn't sign it. He said, maybe we should do an environmental impact study. Maybe we should find out if this is bad for the planet. So 10 days later, he said, we're going to hold off for now on the Keystone. People got arrested, thousands of them, over the next 5 years, and finally President Obama rejected the Keystone XL pipeline and stopped that new acceleration of burning. Yeah, that was a big deal. Now that is the pipeline that's in the news again because President Trump is going to approve it. So that's just one of the things we have to resist, right? But it's an important one. We can't accelerate the burning. Oh, did you guys see any of this? Yeah? So again, like half a dozen people sitting in a room going, what do we do? What do we do? And somebody said, well, you know, they're going to be in the harbor. We could get our kayaks out. What if we get our kayaks in front of this giant Death Star and we like just block it? And we were all chuckling. We're like, yeah, I bet we could get a bunch of people to do that. Yeah, I know. And then we started making plans. And a few months later, the word kayactivist was born. And this picture and video went all around the world. And Shell oil, which was going to the Arctic to drill the place where the ice cap used to be to get more oil, that's crazy, right? They gave up their plans. They left $7 billion in the Arctic. They are not going back anytime soon. As long as you and I keep watching. We stopped them. They actually got their ships up there, and they did their test drilling. But all over the world, people were protesting Shell, and Shell needs customers. They were losing customers. So they said, we're not going to drill the Arctic oil. Not for the foreseeable future. So kayaks and other things stopped Shell oil from drilling the ice cap. Kayaks, we did not know we would be able to do this. We did it because we had to do something. But it worked. It worked. You never know what's going to work. We've got to stop the new pipelines like Dakota Access. Absolutely. We can't burn any faster. But we also can't keep burning as much as we're burning. We stopped 15% of the nation's oil supply. That means that if we had convinced the oil companies to keep our locks on there, keep them all 5 locked shut, that would have satisfied my obligation to you for 2016 and for part of 2017. Because we got to cut our emissions 90% a year, right? And then we'd need to go find 5 more pipelines worth of oil to stop burning. So that's what you and I are doing. When we get our electric cars and when we walk to school or we bus or bike, that's what we're doing. We're shutting off the tar sands. Okay? So we're in an emergency. We waited. Martin Luther King said, when a person, he said this in a letter from Birmingham jail, he was arrested 30 times in his life. 30 times. And he wrote a letter from jail to some white ministers who were saying, you need to just be patient. You need to wait. The change is coming. The change is coming. And in his letter, he said, what's most frustrating is not the opposition, the people who shout at us in the streets. What's most frustrating is our white allies and their silence, telling us to wait, telling us that they prefer order over justice. When a person stands up to an unjust law and is willing to face the punishment, they arouse the conscience of the community and show ultimate respect for the law. So that's what me and my friends did. We're doing this to arouse the conscience of the community. We're telling the story everywhere we can, as long as we can, until we go and we tell it to the jury. My friend Ken Ward, here in Washington State, shut off the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And you can read about him in the news if you do a Google search. He went to trial 3 weeks ago. And for 2 days, he did not challenge any of the evidence against him. He presented the video of him turning off the pipeline, a 7-minute uncut version. So the prosecution showed Ken's video of himself turning off the thing. He didn't challenge it. He never said he didn't break the law. He only took the stand in his own defense and told people what he'd been doing since he was a kid for the environment and to fight climate change. And at the end of that time, the jury went off to deliberate, and they spent 7 hours and overnight trying to decide if he was guilty of sabotage and burglary. And after 7 hours, they came back deadlocked. Even though they watched him do it twice, even though they had all the evidence and none of it was questioned, even though he never said he didn't do it, 12 people could not agree that he was guilty. And they were not going to reach a decision. No more time deliberating would have answered that question. So Ken will be retried on May 1st. I'm going to go to a hearing at the end of March and find out when my trial will be. I got to tell you, it felt really good to shut off the Keystone 1 pipeline. That was like a dream come true. I look at my hands and I can't believe that these hands turned off that pipeline. I did something that made a difference, and it was powerful.
Keystone Pipeline, North Dakota. I'm Michael Foster. In order to preserve life as we know it and civilization, give us a fair chance and our kids a fair chance, I'm taking action as a citizen. I am duty bound.